Perfect. Hi, guys. I hope you're having a good day, and thanks for having me here today. My name is Baron Bulcott, and I'm the Associate Director of Admissions at California Western School of Law in San Diego. And today we'll kind of talk about law school on a budget, how to be savvy with money. The first part of the session, I will talk a little bit about our school, California Western, and just the kind of our programs, scholarship opportunities, student culture, things like that. And then we'll kind of get a little bit more into the new financial aid landscape. I'm not a financial aid person. I'm in admissions, but I do have a financial planning background. So I'll give you some general information, but for any specific, very specific information, I'll direct you to your financial aid counselors over there, or any of the law schools that you're um, looking to apply to. With that, we can get going. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. And then if you do have any questions, we'll have time at the end. I'll leave time at the end for questions. So if you do have them, please hold on to them until the end. So let me just share my screen. All right. Can you guys see that? Thumbs up. Perfect. All right. So again, today, just our information session topics are going to be an overview of Cal Western, the financial aid landscape, and just kind of managing expenses and minimizing costs. So as far as an overview, again, I work for California Western School of Law. We are located in downtown San Diego, so on the other side of the other coast. We are the oldest law school in San Diego. We've been around since 1924, so we just celebrated our centennial last year. Um, Again, being located downtown is also great. We are within walking distance to a lot of the courthouses, a lot of the major law firms. There's plenty of neighborhoods within walking distance. So a lot of our students, both live within walking distance and have internships within walking distance. Just as a city, San Diego is also a great city. I mean, Orlando is great as well. I've been there plenty of times. I actually went to your graduate professional school fair last year. I believe it's going to be one of my colleagues who goes this year as well. So plenty of sunshine, a lot of outdoor things to do. One of the great things about San Diego is that it is the eighth largest city in the US, so we do have a lot of opportunities for law students and jobs, but there are actually only a couple of ABA accredited law schools there. It's just us and then USD, so that also makes things like getting internships and jobs a little less competitive compared to similarly sized cities that might have, five or six law schools. As far as our programs, our JD program is our primary program. We do have a full-time day program, but we also do have a part-time evening program for those students who wish to, work while going to law school or have other responsibilities. Both of our programs are in-person programs, so while we do have a limited number of online classes that you can take while you're a student, the bulk of the instruction will take place in person, so it's not an online or hybrid program. It would require, relocating to San Diego. As far as our culture and student experience, we are definitely one of the most diverse law schools in the nation. For our most recent fall entering class that just started a few weeks ago, we were 56% diverse from a racial or ethnic standpoint. We were 57% identified as women. 41% were first generation college students, 14% identified as LGBTQ, and we had 10% military service background. So we're a very diverse law school. Our culture is definitely very student-centered and collegial and supportive. Law school is going to be hard work and competitive wherever you go. But Cal Western is definitely not a cutthroat environment. It's definitely a lot more collegial and supportive. The student body is, again, very supportive of each other. Um, Let's see, and we're also an independent law school, which means we're not part of an undergraduate university. So this is all we do. So everybody's going to know your name. All of our support departments, such as our student affairs office, career and professional development, our academic achievement. So it's definitely a very personalized experience. Um, Discussing a little bit of our fall 2025 entering class profile and application process. So for the fall 2025 entering class, our median LSAT was a 155, our median GPA was a 3.5. So the general rule of thumb for any law school that you're applying to, if you're kind of at or above their medians, you're generally putting yourself in the most competitive spot, both for admission and for scholarships. If you're below those or one or the other, that doesn't mean that you won't get in. We do a holistic application review where we, in addition to all the academic factors, we do review things like your personal statement, adversity statement, resume, letters of recommendation. So we do a holistic review, but in general, having an LSAT or GPA above the medians, again, will put you in the strongest spot. As far as the application process, like pretty much all ABA law schools, you would apply through LSAC, the Law School Admission Council, which is the organization that also administers the LSAT. So you would create an account with them when the time comes if you haven't already done so, and find our application there and apply through there. As I mentioned, we do require a personal statement, two letters of recommendation, and a copy of your resume. And we do have an optional adversity statement as well that you can write about if you've had to, about any challenges that you've had to overcome. Scholarships, which is going to be a big point of discussion for today. At Cal Western, we do automatically consider you for scholarships with your application. They are merit-based, so they will look at things like your LSAT scores and GPAs. Our scholarships can range anywhere from a few $1,000s a year all the way up to a full tuition scholarship that covers all of your tuition. Um, Generally, since they are merit-based, again, having a higher LSAT score and GPA will help in not just admissions, but also scholarship consideration as well. If you're admitted, your admission letter will let you know whether or not you're offered a scholarship and what the terms are and such. So that's a little bit about California Western. So I will move on to the financial aid landscape. So for anybody who's recently heard on the news about the one big beautiful bill and everything from the current administration, it did change the financial aid landscape for federal student loans, and unfortunately, it was not for the better. So it definitely will make things a little bit more difficult for students who wish to go to law school starting with fall 2026, well, in 2026 and beyond. So the current landscape before the change was you could essentially borrow up to your total cost of attendance. Every law school will post what their total cost of attendance is on their website, and that's the total of what the tuition cost is and how much, and then extra for potentially living expenses and miscellaneous expenses, books, things like that. So, generally, the current landscape was that, even if you had no scholarship, you could typically borrow up to the total cost of attendance through federal student loans. Again, I'm not a financial aid person, so I won't go into too much nitty-gritty details of that, but essentially you could borrow up to around 20,500 per year for what they called unsubsidized direct loans, and then the rest you could borrow up to through something that was called the Graduate Plus loan. So with the one big beautiful bill, unfortunately, the Graduate Plus loans are going away. So they're no longer going to be a loan that you could borrow from the federal government. The unsubsidized direct loans, they go up from $20,500 per year to $50,000 per year for professional students. They're actually lower for if you're just going to other, general like grad school. But if you're going to a professional school, which is mainly law schools and medical school, you can borrow up to 50,000 per year. There's a 200,000 aggregate limit and a 257,500 lifetime limit, including undergraduate loans. So all that to say is there's definitely you're going to need to do a little bit more planning about how to cover law school costs, and definitely do the best you can to try to get as many scholarships as you can, so that you can reduce that total cost of attendance. We all know that law school, unfortunately, is not cheap. Many law schools, their tuition is going to be typically around, especially for private institutions that may not have like in-state tuition and such, or for out-of-state tuition for public schools. I mean, they may be anywhere from, the 60 to 70,000, per year. So add on to that, living expenses and such, most law schools, they might have a total cost of attendance close to around, $100,000 a year. So if you're only able to borrow, almost half of that through the federal government, that does leave a big gap of, to kind of fill. Um, that brings me the best way to fill that gap, scholarships. I wrote grants on there just to kind of reiterate. Grants, unfortunately, things like federal Pell Grants and such, they don't exist at the graduate school level. So you may have gotten it for undergrad, but you're not eligible for them at the graduate school level. So your primary funding sources for law school are going to come from scholarships, either from the school that you're applying to or external scholarships. And then it's going to be student loans. So I'll discuss a little bit scholarships. I already kind of talked about us, where we automatically consider you for scholarships, and your admission letter will let you know, again, whether or not you're offered one. Many law schools are very similar. They do consider students for their scholarships as well. So if you're admitted, chances are, your admission letter is going to let you know whether or not, again, you have a scholarship. Um, don't feel like you're limited to the scholarships of the schools that you're applying to. There are plenty of external scholarships out there that we always recommend that you apply to. A great place, if you want to jot this down, to find those external scholarships is through Access Lex. And if you haven't heard of Access Lex, they're a great resource for law students and law schools as well. They're basically a nonprofit organization that focuses on financial literacy and resources, primarily for law students. And they partner with law schools on certain things as well. And they have a really great scholarship data bank. The easiest way to find it is if you go to Google and just type in Access Lex Scholarship Data Bank. It'll be the first link that comes up. At any given point, they have about 700 to 800 different scholarships that they aggregate on their website. And you can filter it by if you are an incoming student or a 2L or a 3L, because some scholarships will have different criteria. Some will be only for entering students like yourselves. Some will be for current law students, and they will order those also by the deadlines that are coming up. So we always encourage you to apply for any and all external scholarships that you think you meet the criteria for. Some of the scholarships, they might get only a few applications just because it does usually take a statement, like a two-page statement and some other information to apply for them, which many students, don't want to take the time to do. But it's helpful to write just kind of a base, generic, two-page, you know, statement regarding scholarship eligibility, as many of them might ask for similar things, and then tailor that statement to the requirements of each scholarship that you're applying for. And again, most of these scholarships, they're not going to be huge amounts. They can range anywhere from, $500 to, some of them can be a size around like, 10, 15,000, but most will typically be between 500 and $5,000. But if you keep getting, a few thousand scholarship here, a few thousand scholarship there, they are eventually going to add up, especially, in this landscape where your, federal loans are going to be limited. Um, so aside from scholarships, we already kind of talked about student loans and the limits that are going to be imposed on federal student loans now. So if you do still have a gap between, scholarships, any federal that you've gotten, external scholarships, your main sources of funding for the rest is either going to be, personal funds that you've saved up or family funds, or private loans are going to become much more of a thing than they are now. So currently, pretty much everybody, just takes out, federal student loans as they have better, repayment terms, more benefits. But since those are limited now, many students anticipate are going to have to turn to private lenders for taking out private student loans. So definitely do your, research about that and make sure, to compare there. If you do need to take private loans, make sure to compare their, um, you know, terms, benefits, things like that. But my general advice would be to try to limit the amounts you borrow through private lenders as much as you can, just because in general, the federal student loans are going to give you better terms and repayment terms and such. So moving on from the financial aid landscape, part of what this session is about, just kind of managing expenses and, living on a budget. So the first thing about living on a budget is actually make a budget and then stick to it as much as you can. We do realize that emergency expenses can come up, cars can break down. Do try to have a little pool of money set aside for things like emergency expenses that can come up. But in general, try to make a budget, try to live frugally, especially when you're a law student. One of the biggest expenses that you're going to have, probably just like now, as a law student, is going to be your housing costs. So, if you are able to live at home and, go somewhere that if that's an option for you, and you don't mind doing that. I mean, obviously, I didn't want to live back home after going to college, but we definitely do see, law students do, living at home while if their parents are close by. That will definitely cut down a lot of your housing costs, or most likely you're going to be, either moving somewhere else for college or it's not an option to live at home. So you're going to be getting a place by yourself. My big advice is if you're able to definitely find roommates instead of finding a one-bedroom place or a studio by yourself. I'm assuming it's probably similar in Orlando, but definitely in San Diego here. The incremental cost of going from like a one bedroom to a two bedroom is fairly minimal. So, a one bedroom might be, $1,800 a month, where if you get a two bedroom, it might go up like $300 or $400 to like, let's say 2,200. So if you're splitting that with one other person, then your rent cost has gone down by several $100s as opposed to just getting a one bedroom by yourself. Further, you're also splitting utility costs and other things as well. So if you're able to find at least a two to, three bedroom or more place with, roommates, then that's definitely going to reduce your housing costs. Many law schools will give you some resources about, finding roommates and places. For example, for us, we do have a student housing webpage that gives you some more, first of all, information about just San Diego neighborhoods, how far away they're from California Western, a little bit more about them. But we also do have a housing group Facebook page and an entering student Facebook page for each class. So students do connect with each other for roommate opportunities through there. But definitely my big advice would be if you're able to, try to find roommates to reduce your housing costs. Textbooks are still going to be a big expense in law school. Some professors, have switched to maybe online sources, which might still, cost a good bit of money, but many professors, still use, regular textbooks, which can be, some of them, two, $300 per textbook. So if you're able to find used textbooks, for cheaper, definitely try to get those. Many law schools, around the time that you're starting, they might have like book fairs. Some of the student organizations might put on book fairs through there, or they might have other resources to find used textbooks. So if you're able to find them, or you can find them online as long as it's not a new edition that has changed too much, that can definitely save you a lot of money. So definitely look for used textbook resources when you're starting law school. Um, One of the other big expenses is obviously food, and entertainment. So my big advice would be try to cook at home most of the time, and reduce expenses related to eating out or other entertainment. Don't cut those out entirely. I mean, law school is going to be a lot of work, a lot of studying. So you do need to kind of do some of the things that you like, just to make sure, your mental health is still good, go out and, do the things that you still enjoy. And if part of it is just kind of going out to eat and doing things, definitely still do all of those things, but be mindful about it. I wrote here, take advantage of happy hour discounts when eating out. I mean, I do that to this day. I'm sure, I think you guys have happy hours over there in Orlando. We definitely have a bunch of them here in San Diego. Most of them will take place, in the afternoon, like 4 to 6, 4 to 5. So if you're able to, go out and do that a little bit earlier, most of the items there, food, drinks, everything will be, you know, s- really discounted or even up to like half off sometimes. So the difference in your, bill at the end of the day, if you go an hour early, might be half of what it was if you just went there like half an hour later. So definitely do pay attention to the things like that. Take advantage of free campus resources and events. So when you start law school, wherever you decide to go, typically like student organizations, student affairs offices, they'll give you plenty of information. For us, we have weekly emails that go out. regarding all the campus happenings and resources and things that are going on. Our student organizations, we have over 30 student organizations. So there's always events going on, and they put on different events with a lot of free lunch. So there's typically always some sort of event going on at school that has, free pizza or free lunch. So take advantage of as many of those as you can. Obviously, the less you have to, buy food, the better it's going to be. Look for any student discounts. Once you get your obviously student cards in law school as well, for anything like transportation, other things, bus passes. Look for anything that obviously has a discount for being a student. That's going to reduce all of your expenses as well. So that's mostly what I wanted to cover, and I did want to leave a good amount of time for questions. So if you guys have any, feel free to take them. I will put the next slide up real quick, and I'll also put this in the chat, but I'll stop sharing since we're just doing questions. But that is my email out up there as well. So if you wanted to make a note of it, um, if you also email our general admissions email here, it goes to everybody, including myself. So somebody will answer you promptly as well. And our general admissions email is just admissions@cwsl.edu. But I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And yeah, I'm happy to take any questions that you guys might have about any of that. And feel free to either type them in the chat or use the hand raise function. I think Priya might also assist with that as well.
Yes, so we have a question. Somebody was asking, are we less likely to get merit-based scholarships the later we apply in the application cycle?
Yes. So definitely applying earlier, great question, is going to be your friend. So check out the websites or just get in touch with the different law schools that you're interested in applying to, as the how early you need to apply will depend on each different school. For us, we're kind of on the later side, so our priority application deadline is April 1st, whereas some other law schools might have them in, February or even December in some cases if it's like an early decision program. The later you wait, so after that, for example, after April 1st, our application is open until the end of July. Our application is pretty much open almost all year with the exception of August. But the seats start filling up pretty quickly after that April deadline. So both scholarship funding and seats start becoming less and less. So it does make it more competitive to, number one, get actually into the school, and number two, for scholarship purposes, the funding will start to, run out a little bit more after that. And part of the reason for that is so when you apply to law school, um, even if you get in, let's say you apply early in October and you get a decision in November, the schools will give you what's called a seat deposit deadline to kind of make your decision and let the law school that you are intending to attend know. So seat deposits are typically they can be anywhere from $500 all the way up to $1,000 depending on the school, where you're basically putting on a deposit, a non-refundable deposit, saying, "Hey, X law school, I'm going to attend over there. You can count on me." So then the law schools, based on that, will kind of reserve your seat for the fall and, basically save it for you. Per LSAC's best practices guidelines, no law school should really give you a seat deposit deadline before April 1st. Most law schools deposits will range from April 1st to April 30th. Some law schools will have two deposits, some will have one, but the first one will usually be sometime in April. So once April passes, many law schools have gotten, a lot of seat deposits, so they know that a lot of their seats are already kind of taken up. So that's the benefit of applying early. So definitely apply as early as you can. Pretty much most law school applications are open now. They open September 1st. So the best time to apply is usually sometime in the fall for the most part. But if you're still studying for the LSAT, and you're not going to be able to take it until a little later, maybe, don't rush that either. So obviously take all the time that you need to prepare as much as you can for that. But it's a long-winded answer of saying applying early definitely helps.
And then someone said, I've heard that working during your 1L year is discouraged, but is it common to work during 2L and 3L?
Yeah, it is. And those are dependent on the academic policies of each school as well. So many law schools will actually have academic policies that either prohibit or limit you from working as a 1L if you're a full-time student. So for us, if you're a full-time first-year student, you're only limited to working up to 5 hours a week for your first year. And we do recommend that you don't work at all just because law school is, it's a big adjustment, a big transition, especially in your first year while you're trying to figure things out. But when you get to your second year and beyond, yeah, our policies allow you to work up to 20 hours a week, even if you're a full-time student. And it is pretty common for students to both do an internship or work and also go to school if you think you can handle it.
Not seeing any questions, but I was wondering maybe if you could speak on, or actually, there's a question in the chat. What do you recommend for people who do not have the choice to not work?
If you don't have the choice to not work, I'd say probably look into the part-time programs. So for example, our part-time evening program, one, it doesn't have a limit on how much you can work, so you can work full-time and attend that, although we do recommend kind of scaling back the hours a little bit if you can, just because even part-time law school is going to be, a good amount of commitment. And since it's an evening program, it does allow you to work during the day. So for example, our part-time program is designed for, students who are looking to work while going to school.
And then going off of that, is there any jobs that if students do have to work that you recommend, like maybe on campus or like at the library or different opportunities you think that would be better for student schedule?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we do definitely have on-campus jobs that come up. I mean, they're mostly going to be for either second-year students and beyond, or we do have first-year students who do work as well. There's usually second semester students, but they will still be limited to 5 hours a week. But yeah, I mean, we have students who work in our office as student ambassadors. They do our campus tours. They talk to, prospective students and admitted students to answer questions, answer emails. Other offices also have student workers as well. So yeah, if you can get an on-campus job, then, will be more amenable to work, obviously, with your schedule, and you'll already be here. Many other students also, if you're going to work, they try to get, legal internships and law clerkship jobs, as opposed to, working at like Starbucks or something like that, because you're both, especially if they're paid, obviously, you're both getting money and also legal experience and making connections at different law firms and such. So, those would be our recommendations, either on campus jobs or law clerkships and legal internships while you're going to school.
And then are students able to work as teaching assistants as they get further on throughout their experience in law school?
They can, yeah. I mean, this can change from school to school, but yeah, so all of our first year classes come with tutoring sessions. They're optional, but we always recommend that, you attend them. And they are taught by what we call teaching fellows, so kind of like a TA in college. So they're usually a student who did really well in that class the year before, and they work with the professor to make sure that they're covering the same materials week to week. And they'll usually have tutoring hours set, and they'll be noted on the syllabus, every week, and they'll give you helpful handouts and kind of cover the information again and maybe put it in kind of a little bit more digestible terms. And yeah, those are definitely, student jobs. Typically, you do need to do pretty well in a class, so that in your second year, if you did really well in your contracts class in the 1L year, then you might apply and potentially be chosen for that. But you do need to do pretty well academically in that class that you're looking to teach and be a teaching fellow for.
And then we had a question, how are semesters divided at Cal Western by fall, spring, summer?
Yeah, so we do have classes going on in fall, spring, and summer. So summers are optional. So fall and spring are our two primary semesters that are required. Students can take summer classes if they wish. Summer is a shortened term, so you can't take a full load of classes. I believe the maximum amount of units that you can take during the summers is 10. But yeah, you can definitely register to take classes during the summers if you wish, if you want to kind of accelerate your graduation a little bit and get more credits. But the primary ones that are required are fall and spring.
And then during the summers, is work allowed during the summers, during when classes are not taken? And then does the school have any on-campus or any clinical connections to finding work for students who are looking for paid internships?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you're summer, if you're not going to school or if you're just going part-time, you don't have a limit on how much you can work. So summer is the time where most students will do full-time internships or work. And yeah, absolutely. We have a career and professional development office, which is one of our main support offices, along with our academic achievement office and student affairs. And they will help you every step of the way to find internships while you're in school and for attorney jobs after graduating. So that office has many resources. One, they do have an online job database that you'll get access to with new internships and jobs that are posted every day. We do on-campus recruiting fairs at least twice a year, if not three, where employers come to our campus to interview for internships and jobs. They also do resources like different workshops. They bring in attorneys in certain areas of law if students are interested to chat with them. They can look at your resume and cover letter and give you helpful tips to make them better. Before your actual interviews, they can do mock interviews with you to give you pointers and feedback on how you're interviewing. So yeah, most of our students are very involved with our career and professional development office, and most of them will find their first summer internships through that office.
And then are there any research opportunities or moot court competitions where there's a chance of financial awards?
I think there's limited like research assistantships. It really depends on professor. If one becomes available, students are, will be notified, and that would be kind of like an on-campus job. I think they are a little bit more limited than like other types of on-campus jobs or like teaching fellowships. It really just depends on the professor and, if they need any research help. But yeah, it does come up from time to time. Um, and then as far as like, legal clinics and things like that, I mean, most of those are going to be for academic credit or like moot court. Those aren't usually, not to my knowledge, I don't think there's like a financial component to those. But I will say, especially if you're interested in litigation, we do have very competitive moot court trial teams. During your first year, you'll get information on like how to try out and apply for those. We have a trial team, we have an appellate team, and then we have an ADR, alternative dispute resolution team, like negotiation and such. And they do competitions pretty much throughout the year. Some are more like San Diego based, some are regional, some are national. And they're very competitive. If you go on our website for our like competitive advocacy teams, that's what we call them. You'll be able to see all of their achievements. I mean, they go to national competitions and do extremely well. Some of these national competitions, they go to the semifinals, finals against like really big name schools as well. So we have a very competitive moot court teams. And again, you'll definitely get more information about them, if you do end up, choosing to attend here. But again, those are generally for like, they're not going to be like a financial, component for it. You won't be like paid to do those. But students do get jobs out of them all the time because a lot of these competitions, the local attorneys and, they act as like judges or, coaches, things like that. So, we've gotten plenty of students who've gotten offers for employment just because our students do so well. A lot of these attorneys, see them in competitions and giving like opening statements, even if it's like in a moot court context, they're, arguing cases like in real court and, they do so well that, they actually do get, job offers through that program.
And then what is your biggest tip, I guess? What tip do you think is the most useful for students in general?
Um, well, so I guess, it depends on where you are in the application process. So while you're, or, if you're in school. So my biggest tip in the application process would be, cast a wide net, apply to, you don't have to apply to like 30 different schools, but in general, students do on average, I think apply to around like 10 law schools or so. Do keep your options open, cast a wide net. We don't charge an application fee on our end. If any school does, reach out to them to ask for like a waiver. Many law schools have different ways where like you can get a waiver from them. Um, you never know what kind of offers that you're going to get from different schools. You know, if you're still in the process of studying for like the LSAT or another admission test. So for example, for us, you're not limited to the LSAT. We accept the LSAT, the GRE, and also there's a newer exam called JD Next, which is kind of like an 8 week long course that you do with an exam at the end. So it's a little less like a standardized exam. So pay attention to each law school that you're interested in and kind of what they require. So not all law schools, for example, will accept JD Next or GRE. But whatever test you're studying for and decide to take, I mean, make sure to put in the necessary time and effort for it. It's, just one component of the application review process, but it does tend to be an important component. So that will open definitely doors both for admission and for scholarships, which are even more important now with the limits on federal student loans. Obviously, you guys are still in school. I'm not sure, if you guys are if many of you are, in your senior year or if you've got more time to go, especially if you've got more time to go, keep up your grades as much as you can. Your undergraduate GPA is going to be, one of the most important factors that are considered in the admissions process, if not the most important, just because it does show a history of how well you're doing academically, which is going to be a very good predictor of how well you might do, in law school. So law schools definitely pay a lot of attention to your grades in school. So, if you already have a good GPA, keep it up. If you think you've got some, work to do to improve it, do as much as you can to try to, finish strong and, do the best you can. Law schools also look at not just your final GPA, but kind of your grades kind of across your college career. So if you can show an upward trend in grades, maybe you didn't do so well in your freshman and sophomore year. We get it. It's always an adjustment. Some people like to party a lot. Some people just have an adjustment period. But if you can show that your grades have steadily improved from when you started college to when you're ending, that will definitely be a positive as well. So that would be, and then once you get admission letters, hopefully to multiple schools, many law schools will have admitted student days typically in the spring. Some can start as early as like February and go as late as like May. We usually have a couple, one in March and one in April typically. And so you'll get invitations from schools to kind of attend those. My advice would be to try to attend as many of those as you can, because most of those will include, presentations from staff, faculty. You'll get a chance to meet other entering students, but also current students. So those events will give you um, a really good idea of, whether that school is the right fit for you. And sometimes, it just comes down to that. You go there, you talk to people, and, you can really see yourself there for the next 3 years of your life or beyond. Definitely attend as many of those as you can. Many law schools might even give you a little bit of like a travel stipend, especially if you're coming from like out of state or out of town. So do take advantage of those. My big advice for when you're in law school is going to be, obviously make that your priority. The general rule of thumb in law school is, if you're a full-time student, treat it like a full-time job. Typically, you're only taking about like 15 units per term, so you're only in class about 15 hours a week. But the recommended study time in law school is anywhere from like 2 to 2.5 hours per unit that you're taking. So add another at least like 30 to that. Law school, full-time law school is really like a 45 to 50 hour commitment between class time and study time. And that's why working, especially in the first year, working is, very discouraged or prohibited or limited by academic policies because it really should be your job just to be studying. And then my big advice would be take advantage of all the resources that, the law school that you ultimately choose to attend offers. I mentioned we have three main student support departments, our student affairs office, which kind of oversees student organizations, but also mental health resources, our academic achievement office, which oversees kind of things like the tutoring program that I mentioned, other academic resources, bar prep, and then our career and professional development office, who oversees the internships and jobs. So, make sure you are in contact with those offices. I mean, they'll be in contact with you guys, but make sure that you're setting up the appointments to talk to them, taking advantage of all the resources. In general, if we see any students struggling in any aspect like academics or jobs, they're usually the ones who've, never walked through the doors of those offices to seek any help.
And then, thank you. And how do you recommend leveraging or negotiating scholarship offers between different law schools?
Yeah, so that really can depend on each school. I mean, some law schools, I think they have a formal process for requesting a reconsideration of the scholarship. So you would follow their steps. We don't have a formal process. If we always try to lead with our best foot forward and give you kind of the most amount of scholarships that we can, offer. But if you do end up getting offers from other schools at higher, we do have an informal way of you can request a reconsideration, which is just you can just email our office with just a short narrative about, why you're seeking a reconsideration. And then if you do have any scholarship offers from other schools that you've received, send those to us, and then we'll review it and see if it is possible to increase your scholarship amount. It's not a guarantee. We don't match scholarships, but if we have some extra funding that becomes available, it is possible to that your scholarship could be increased. Do pay attention to like the different offers in schools and how competitive their, admissions are. Sometimes we get um, scholarship reconsideration requests, and they'll attach a scholarship like, well, this school gave me like, 100% scholarship, and you guys only gave me like 75. But the other school, is not even an ABA accredited school, for example. So the different levels, if you guys don't know, the highest level of accreditation you can get is the ABA accreditation, but there's definitely other law schools around that are maybe like state accredited, and such. So do pay attention to how competitive the admission might be for each school. Obviously, any schools that where the admission is less competitive, and your metrics like your LSAT scores and GPAs are, well above their medians, you're going to get more scholarship money than if you've gotten into a school where, you may have like barely got in or more borderline or more in line or even below their entering credentials. But yeah, it's definitely possible, and check with the schools that you're interested in about what their process would be for requesting a reconsideration.
And then we had another question. Somebody was asking, if I do part-time law school, do the student loans then have a cap of 10K per year?
No, it will be. So I don't know the answer to the exact one. I don't know if anybody does yet. I think as part of the big beautiful bill, yeah, if you go part-time, then that 50,000 per year limit is less. It's prorated. I don't think it's been exactly figured out like what that proration or limit is going to be yet. So when the time comes, definitely work with the financial aid offices of like the law schools that you're interested in. They might be able to give you a lot more information. But the last couple of things that I had read, I don't think there's like a specific cap that applies to everybody for like part-time, but it will be prorated. Yeah, it won't be 50,000 per year for part-time. It'll be less, but I don't imagine it'll be as low as like 10,000, but it'll be less than 50.
And then beyond Access Lex, is there any other websites or scholarship sources that you would recommend or that you've heard of?
I mean, Access X is generally the most comprehensive that I've seen. You may want to check out like the ABA, American Bar Association. I know they have like some scholarships that they put up. If you Google like ABA law student scholarships, they might aggregate some. LSAC might have some that's aggregated. Or you could just Google kind of like, law school scholarships and things like that. There's definitely different sources, but AccessX is the most comprehensive one that I've seen and the most applicable typically to law students.
Thank you. And I think that's all of our questions. I'm going to go ahead and drop the end of the meeting survey into the chat if everybody could fill that out. And then if Baron, if you could drop your email as well into the chat, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we really appreciate you coming out today. And thank you so much for
Yeah,
speaking
thank
with
you so
us.
much for having me. So I dropped my email too in the chat. But again, you can also just email us at admissions@cwsl.edu as well. That's our general email that will go to everybody, including myself. I'll drop that in there also. Yeah, well, thank you guys so much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you again. We really appreciate it.
Bye.